Okay.
That works.
Turn it off.
And then, I know Amber, especially now that she's engaged, she has a lot of experience there.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the inaugural meeting of the Climate Action Commission. Normally the chair would start this, but we don't have one quite yet. So I'm going to go ahead and guide the meeting until we actually have the election of the chair. So there's just a few things we'll start off with. So I'm calling the meeting to order. And the first order is the Pledge of Allegiance, which is flags behind you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the next step is we do the roll call. So Commissioner Conlon.
Present.
Commissioner Heinerman.
Present.
Commissioner Morrell.
Here.
Commissioner Nickel.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Commissioner Clemens.
Here.
And Commissioner McCloskey.
Here.
Okay, great, thank you. So what we do at this point is we open it up for general public comment. And I will read a brief statement. So at this time, members of the public may comment on any item that is not appearing on the agenda. It's recommended that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Under state law, unless otherwise permitted under the Ralph M. Brown Act, the merits of the matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the Commission at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for consideration. Upon being acknowledged by the chair, or tonight it will be me in the interim, please step to the podium and speak into the microphone. Begin by stating and spelling your name. Or if you're commenting by Zoom, after being recognized, please state and spell your name. Are there any general public comments?
Does not appear anyone is wanting to speak, and there are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, we'll close the public comment period then. So typically we do the consent calendar, which is the minutes and maybe other items, but since this is the inaugural meeting, there are no minutes, so we will just skip over the consent calendar because there's nothing there. So the first order on the regular calendar is agenda item 3.1, the election of the chair. So duties of the Climate Action Commission chair is that the chair resides and runs the meetings. The chair also is the primary point of contact with a designated staff member who's the sustainability coordinator. The chair also can serve as the point of contact with the city council, Prior to each meeting, the Sustainability Coordinator will provide the chair with a copy of the draft agenda for comment and advice or recommendations. The term of office is 1 year, and there are no term limits. At the suggestion of one of the commissioners, I did send out a link to everyone's resume. I realize, or an application. I realize many of you don't know each other. So as I mentioned in the email, it would be great if you just talked about yourself just briefly. I kind of raised a few points. If you don't want to, that's fine. Just as a way to just so you know each other, and then that would serve as the introduction for this agenda item and then the subsequent agenda item of the vice chair. Because this represents staff presentation, first of all, if you have any technical questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
I didn't push the right button before. I figured
okay.
it out.
That's
I got
okay.
2 buttons. These guys only have 1.
You're ahead of me, thank you.
So if there's no technical questions, I'm going to ask each commissioner just to briefly introduce yourself. And I'm going to ask Amber too, because I'm a W.
Thank you. My name is Amber Ward. I moved to Sonoma in 2019, right before COVID. I work in the wine industry, mainly in packaging and with the production team, so all about what we can do to make that not always green industry a much greener industry. It's important. I have a degree in environmental studies from USF down in the city, and I actually focused a lot of that energy towards both wetland sciences and environmental justice issues that we face in the Bay Area. Really looking forward to pulling together a community, both city proper and beyond that, and making this city everything we can towards sustainable practices. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Kendall Clemens and I'm serving as the youth non-voting member of the Climate Action Committee. So I actually wrote a little speech about myself because I don't have any prior experience. So I've lived in Sonoma all my life and I go to Sonoma Valley High School, and I'm involved in a lot of environmentally focused activities and politically focused activities in my community. And I've been student body president for 2 years and helped organize the class of 2025 homecoming floats and held many fundraisers and donated to local organizations. I've been a part of Model United Nations. For both years I've attended high school. That's an educational simulation where students can learn about international relations and the United Nations, and we represent different countries worldwide and debate to find resolutions to issues. I've also been a part of Earth Club, where last year we held a Start to Sustainability walkout, where we marched to the Sonoma Plaza and handed out flyers to local businesses with different links to sustainable options. I also worked as a volunteer camp counselor at the Sonoma Ecology Center and taught children about the importance of taking care of our environment. And these children, like myself, are the future of climate action and justice. Having them connect with nature and learn about sustainable practices and local wildlife at a young age is essential. My interest in politics and experience in several leadership roles has allowed me to understand the importance of youth voices in Sonoma and standing up for what is right. Being a non-voting member of the Climate Action Committee allows me to advocate for my generation and our concern about climate action. And I'm hoping to help make a difference in our community. Thank you.
I came to Jenner 50 years ago with a 1-month-old. 5 children later, I raised them at Occidental, and I've been in Sonoma now for about close to 3 years, and I have been very active in climate. I found my Bible is Rare Earth, and it just was fascinating to discover the science behind all of this. And I found that I spent 10 years trying to bring electric streetcars back to Marin, and everybody wanted it. 3 city councils endorsed it, and the Board of Supervisors turned it down. To really make effective climate change is very challenging, and I really commend getting this kind of panel in place so that we get some real authority to the issues. And so I have been on planning commissions, I've been on design reviews, and I've been on historic landmarks boards in the 3 counties in the North Bay.
Okay, my name is Philip Heinerman. I am a lawyer. What? Is that for him? Okay. Been a lawyer for the firm Fox Rothschild. It's very difficult to tell a lawyer he can have the mic and keep him within the limits, so please stop me if I go too far. But I've been an environmental lawyer for a long time, and I'm now working out of the San Francisco office. I first bought my home here 11 years ago, and now we're gone full time because this is the place. I'm originally from West Virginia, which was where I was by accident of birth, but by choice I am in Sonoma now. My father was mayor of the town in West Virginia. Always said people should be active in their government. If good people aren't, bad people will. So I have finally done my first transition to a government agency. Before, I'm currently the chair of the board of DeRosa Contemporary Art Center, and in Pennsylvania, where I originally practiced, the commute got a little bit too tough from between Philadelphia and San Francisco, so I had to pick. I was head of the Pennsylvania Bar Environmental Section. I'm LEED accredited. We founded the Green Building Council chapter in Philadelphia 22 years ago. It was an epiphany to me to originally get involved in these kinds of issues, sustainability issues, and we started actually during the time I was working with the Pennsylvania Bar, the first bar sustainability program for people in the bar to achieve certification for sustainability. And ultimately, I became the partner in charge of sustainability for a firm that's about 1,000 lawyers now. So that's sort of my general background. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I'm going to try my best because, as I said, I'm a Sonomian. How do you say that, by the way? Sonoman. Okay. See, I don't even know that yet. I'm a Sonoman by choice, not an accident of birth, and we've so far loved it here, and this is it. This is our forever home. If I were an animal, that's what I'd say. If I were a dog, it's my forever home.
That's a hard act to follow. Let me do my best.
It's easy.
I'm David Morell, and I'm pleased to be here this evening. It's a bit of deja vu all over again. I did serve on the now disestablished Community Services and Environment Commission, and I was one of the 2 CSEC commissioners to have the pleasure working on the Joint Climate Action Subcommittee of 2 council members and 2 CSEC commissioners. We made some progress, and things have changed, and here we are again. I lived in Sonoma about 15 years. I bring several decades of experience in environmental management, having started with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in Washington, D.C., running a piece of the National Water Program, then being asked by my boss, what do you know about clean air? And I said, what I knew about water a year ago. So I then got the pleasure of running a piece of the National Clean Air Program. I later served as the Deputy Director of the California Hazardous Waste Program as an appointee of Jerry Brown in the first administration. And among other, and I've done a lot of university teaching and writing and pontificating of various kinds over the years. So at the moment I serve as proudly and actively as the president of the board of the Sonoma Ecology Center, very active there working on projects, in particular on climate and carbon sequestration. And as this commission moves forward, we will be certainly looking for ways to integrate more effectively the actions of the Sonoma Climate Action Commission with the actions of the Sonoma Ecology Center and our climate work. I think 1 and 1 is going to equal about 5 as we move forward together with things like potentially applying for significant foundation grants to do some exciting work. So there's more to say about all of this, but I used to get paid in 50-minute segments, and I'll turn it over to Tom.
Well, talk about tough acts to follow. The whole list here. Tom Conlon. I've never lived in the city of Sonoma. I do have relatives in both cemeteries that are in the city, let's see. I've raised a couple of kids here. Moved to the El Verano area in 1996, and 1992. Pardon me, and. Have been active here, formed a business in energy efficiency consulting. I started my career I'm an applied anthropologist, began my career at UC Santa Cruz, working on the organic farm bill, what eventually became the Organic Farm Bill, and then moved into, I was an electrician, and then into energy efficiency consulting. Had the great opportunity to work on the load forecasting for electric and gas utility consumption all around the country, and really the beginning of the energy efficiency revolution in buildings. Done a lot of work for the California Energy Commission, DOE, and of course the electric and gas utilities around the country, who've been the primary funders of work in the building space for all this time. Proud of many of the accomplishments in that space. We developed some software that Autodesk now uses to do green building energy simulation during the conceptual design process, and ultimately the later design process as well. And worked also with the real estate community in California to come up with a miles per gallon rating for a building. Never has really fully caught on in California yet. When you buy a house, you don't yet have that rating in front of you, but you certainly have the opportunity to get one. Let's see. I've been here in this room on the public side of the dais for a very long time, probably at least 4 city managers, and many rotating members of the previous commissions, as well as the city council. And just very pleased to finally be sitting up here and be working on these matters that we all share, take so seriously. So, thank you.
So the way this will work is open up the floor, the dais for nominations. You can nominate someone else. You can self-nominate. After the nominations are in, we open it up for public comment. There's no seconds required with nominations, and then we'll proceed with a vote. So we'll go ahead and open it up for nominations for chair.
Because I would love to, I think all of us would benefit from David Morell's experience previously as his historical experience with working with staff, working with the city. I'm inclined to move to nominate Mr. Morell as our chair.
Are there any other nominations, which include self-nominations?
Am I stuck?
You can nominate someone else.
I could, but thank you, Tom, is what I'll say. And chairing the board at the Sonoma Ecology Center and all of the independent voices of my board members there, one of whom is in this room at the moment. I won't name any names or look that way. I have some experience in chairing things.
So if there's no further nominations, we'll open it up for public comment. Are there any members of the public present here that would like to make a comment?
We do have one person on Zoom.
Good evening, Chair Morell and members of the commission. I just wanted to say Chair Morell for the first time. Thank you very much.
I could leap in to say that Fred was the previous chair of our joint CSEC and Joint Climate Action Committee. So thank you, Mr. Fred.
Are there any other public comments?
Does not appear so.
Okay, so we'll go ahead with a vote, so it's a roll call vote.
Commissioner Conlon,
Aye.
Commissioner Heinerman,
Aye.
Commissioner Morrell,
Pass, abstain.
Commissioner Nickel,
Aye.
and Commissioner Ward.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you for your support, folks.
So, Chair Morrell, this means you need to introduce the next agenda item, and then I'll discuss it briefly, and then you get to run everything now.
All right. So the next agenda item is the election of the vice chair. I gather from some of what Travis told us that this would be a one-year appointment with no term limits, presumptively, and would take the place of the chair and support the chair in every way possible. So I would open up to my fellow council members to nominate one or more candidates for vice chair.
Before we do that, I'm just going to read exactly what it is, just so everyone understands.
Yes, sir.
But it's
With my pleasure.
That was an excellent summary. So the vice chair will perform the duties of the chair in case of absence or early departure from a meeting for whatever reason. The term of office is 1 year, and there are no term limits. If the chair steps down from the elected role for any season during that year, the vice chair will run the meeting, and at the next scheduled meeting will call for election of a new chair to complete the term. Should the vice chair be elected, then an election will be held for the new vice chair to complete the term. So that's just the staff introduction, and then the floor is open for nominations.
I would call for any of my fellow council members to nominate the person to be vice chair of the council, of the commission.
I would like to nominate Mr. Tom Conlon.
I would be pleased to second that nomination.
We don't have seconds on
We
this
don't
one.
se-
Yeah.
Are there any other nominations from the commissioners? Hearing none, is it up to me or you? I'm in the chair. All right, hearing none, is there any discussion of this?
No, we open it up.
We don't,
for
oh,
public
we
comment.
open it up for public comment?
Yep.
Please do not exceed 3 minutes. I'm trying to learn what I learned from Fred.
He has the buttons now. I don't have mine.
Right.
3 minutes.
I gotta figure out these buttons that I don't know how to do.
It does not appear that there are any members of the public who wish to speak at this time.
All right. It sounds as if we're ready for a roll call vote on the
So you close,
vice
you
chair.
say, sorry. I
We will-
close the public comment period.
Close the public comment period without extensive public comment having appeared, and we'll move to a roll call vote on the election of the vice chair of the commission.
Commissioner Conlon?
I'll abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Heinerman?
Aye.
Commissioner Nickel?
Aye.
Commissioner Ward?
Aye.
And Chair Morrell?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes.
You're not kidding. So we're gonna-
Soros, but
Don't go there. So, Travis, am I now on? We're
So you just
swinging-
introduce the next agenda
Yes,
item,
yes.
and then staff will give a report.
Correct, I see that blue underline would be the staff activity. Our next item on our agenda this evening is the presentation of the City of Sonoma Draft Climate Action Report, 80 pages, which we've all, as commissioners, have received in advance and had the chance to review. So I'll turn to Dr. Wagner for the presentation of the Draft Climate Action Report. Travis?
Thank you, Chairperson Morrell. So I will be giving a staff presentation on the provided draft climate action plan. Following the plan, I would be glad to answer any technical questions. Following that period comes public comment. After public comment, the commission can then discuss the various aspects of the plan provide any recommended actions for staff as appropriate. Okay. So this is the draft climate action plan presentation. It's based on what was included in the agenda packet. Let's see, there we go. So tonight's presentation on the Climate Action Plan is going to first discuss briefly the City of Sonoma's greenhouse gas emissions, a timeline of city actions that have occurred, and then an outline of the Climate Action Plan itself. So regarding the greenhouse gas emissions, we have, these are all provided by our Joint Powers Authority, which is the Regional Climate Protection Authority. They compile the inventory for all jurisdictions in the county. They've started doing it regularly, so we have 2018, 2020. They have backcasted some of the other ones from 1990, 2010, so forth and so on. But this is just for the city. Obviously, other jurisdictions look a little bit differently. And the major categories that they present is transportation, water, wastewater, which is the smallest one. It's really hard to see. It's that small. Buildings, which includes heating, cooling, lighting, and just electrical use for equipment, so forth and so on. And then solid waste, which includes generation, as well as impacts from landfilling and recycling reduction. This is just what it looks like in a different perspective, a pie chart from 2020, just to give you a perspective that, again, transportation by far is our most significant source of greenhouse gases in the city of Sonoma. This also kind of shows it, but what it's showing is in a tabular form, and it's just showing the that basically we're doing well in that all the sectors are decreasing from 1990 levels. Now, let's see. Oh, there. There you go. This one is showing a different perspective. This is the annual per capita greenhouse gases from 1990 to 2020. So in doing it this way, we're able to control for population growth, or there's been a little bit of decrease recently. And from 1990, it's a 41% decrease between 1990 and 2020, which I think is very significant. However, as most of you are probably thinking about what happened in 2020, it's unclear as to how accurate the 2020 is accurate for 2020, but how accurate is that to normal functioning? Because this was during the COVID public health emergency when transportation was significantly cut. Solid waste, probably others went up. Solid waste, we're not sure at all. One of the challenges is the RCPA does the inventory every 2 years. So, and it usually comes out in the fall. So a year and a half from now, we'll get last year's inventory. I know that there's some consideration to do this on an annual basis, but this is what we're working with. So there is a lag time, but I'd be hesitant about reading too much into the 2020 because it could possibly or probably is lower than what we'd expect in 2021 and 2022 because of the public health emergency. So I just want to talk a little bit about timeline of city actions. This is a subject that the city's been dealing with for quite a while. In August 2005, the first greenhouse gas reduction goals were adopted. In 2008, the first greenhouse gas emissions reduction action plan. So we had the reduction goals, but the actual plan, the first one, was passed in or adopted in 2008. In 2017, the city joined the mayor's National Climate Action Agenda, which had some commitments in there. In 2019, the city hired the Sustainability Coordinator, which was the first time the city hired a dedicated position. It is a part-time position, but hired a position dedicated to climate action and environmental sustainability. In 2020, the Climate Action and Environmental Sustainability Accomplishments Report and Work Plan, well, that's a mouthful, was presented and accepted by the City Council. That plan, most of that plan is actually in the agenda packet towards the end. And in April 2020, that was just a listing of actions that had occurred, not necessarily by the city, but also in the city, by the state, but that had impacts on greenhouse gas emissions within the city jurisdiction or city boundaries. In November 2020, the City Council adopted the Climate Emergency Resolution. This was a resolution that was a model produced by the Regional Climate Protection, RCPA, Regional Climate Protection Authority, and was given to all jurisdictions, and they modified them, but I believe everyone has adopted them by now. In that Climate Emergency Resolution, the one the City of Sonoma adopted, it's a target of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. It also created the Joint Climate Action Subcommittee, which is something Commissioner Morrell mentioned. This was the first public committee or commission specifically with a specific mission of developing the climate action plan and then trying to achieve that net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. In 2021, that was the initial meeting of the Joint Climate Action Subcommittee, and they had 5 meetings between 2021 and I think February 2022 was their last meeting. The reason why is in April 2022, the City Council dissolved that particular subcommittee, also dissolved another called the Community Services and Environment Commission, and instead created a single Climate Action Commission with that primary focus of climate action. And here we are, the initial meeting of the Climate Action Commission. So just to summarize, SMC is the Sonoma Municipal Code, Chapter 2.50, which talks specifically about the Climate Action Commission. It was created by city ordinance. It is to advise the City Council on issues related to reducing greenhouse gases. The 3 dots means that there's definitely more in there. I didn't put everything in there. I just wanted to focus on a couple items, but is to develop, update, implement, and communicate the city's climate action plan. Now, one way to think about this is the climate action plan has 3 phases. They're not necessarily sequential, but there's just kind of 3 distinct phases. One is to identify evidence-based actions to reduce greenhouse gases to achieve net zero greenhouse gases by 2030, which is the bulk of this current report. Is the target is there. How is the city going to achieve that target? And I will back up. There's 2 targets. One is for government operations or municipal operations. The other's for the community. So that we're looking at it at 2 distinct sectors. Number 2 is to identify preventative actions to address negative impacts of climate change. And then number 3, address how the city will adapt and improve its resilience to climate hazards. Those 2 items are really not addressed at this stage, but they are critical components of any climate action plan, and they will have to be addressed at some point. So briefly, the climate action plan process. There's really 6 steps, but they're somewhat sequential, but they're circular. So, number 1 is inventory emissions, which we have accomplished. We have that. We have established reduction target. And number 3 is where we're at, is to identify actions to achieve the target. Number 4 is the adopt actions to actually achieve the target, implement actions, evaluate progress, and then it's a continuous aspect. The key component in the center, which I'll talk about a little bit later, is community collaboration or public engagement is really critical, which is missing at this point. And an important part is step 4. For quite a while, we've been stuck at number 3. Even when I go out to the community and give talks or talk to people, they're always offering up new ideas. And I think it's important, but at some point, we need to move forward and start doing some actions. But because this is it's an organic process, there will always be new ideas that come up, and we'll always include those. But we're stuck at that step number 3, and what I would urge the commission to consider is how we move to number 4, because we've been 3 too long. So the Climate Action Plan, to look at the conceptual outline, the way it's structured is the background, the need for climate action, climate actions that have undertaken. I just gave a real short summary list. The climate emergency resolution to give you some background as to what the target is about and how this came about, and then the actual planning process. The next section focuses on greenhouse gas emission inventories. We have community-wide, which is what I just talked about. We also have government operations. Government operations is about, I think it's less than 0.5% of community, but they're 2 distinct sectors because the government has more control over government operations. So that's why it's divided. And then we have potential climate actions, which is framed as major sources. Community engagement is not a major source of climate action, but it's in there because it's really critical. So it's just from an organizational standpoint, that's why it's in there. We have transportation, buildings, solid waste, water, government operations, and then carbon sequestration. They're in general order of the contribution of greenhouse gases. So under each of those major sources, so there's a section, for example, I'll just say transportation. There's a separate section for that. Each section is laid out with goals, major accomplishments that have been undertaken, and then specific climate action strategies. And under each one of those, once you get to past those sections, there's what's called a climate action table. And then for each action within that climate action table, and I'll show you an example in a second, is a description. So with the 7 sources, this is the count right now of the number of actions that are in there for each one. Now, the climate action tables, I just took the first one from transportation, looks like that. So the first one's the title, then there's a summary. After the table, there's a more detailed description of what that particular title is. And then the implementation time frame is color-coded. So blue is short-term. This is the example here is a short-term action. It's also medium-term and long-term based on the amount of time it would take to implement. The potential estimated cost, it's really a guesstimate at this point. Sometimes it says staff ton. There's always costs associated with that, but some of these just need to be developed more. But that would be, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but that's the whole point of prioritization is what are these, and let's develop some more specifics, cost estimates and so forth, which will have to be done for potential budgeting. And then it's also ends up with a greenhouse gas reduction potential, which is a qualitative category of low, moderate, high. So it is qualitative and it's just relative at this point. For some of these, we can actually do some measurements of what they might be, but that has not been done at this time. So that concludes staff report. At this point, if you have any technical questions on the report before it's opened up for public comment, I'd be glad to answer them.
I have a few questions, and you can help give me some of the history. In the draft report, we don't talk about deployment plan that the CEC developed for California's EV charging stations. Have you given thoughts to that? The next 5 years, California is going to spend $1 billion, and it's mostly going to go to corridors. But the U.S. government's going to spend several billion more in that area. And have you thought about adding that into the draft plan?
We have, staff has produced an EV charging implementation plan, which was published. One of the challenges with the city of Sonoma is we have very little public property to actually site these. There's one potential candidate site, and that's kind of where we're at. We did meet the goal of the city council at that time because we had the addition of the Tesla superchargers. There was two L2 chargers there as well. They're open to everyone. We replaced the two broken ones behind Sebastiani, and the Electrify America superchargers, which are available for everyone, came online, which are in the Bank of America. There's still some need, and so that's kind of where we're at that. So it is under a separate report, but you know, if the
So we
if the
really
commission,
haven't looked yet on possible sources of funding, because for publicly available level 3, level 2 chargers, on average, you're getting around 2/3 of the costs paid for by government grants. There's also a lot now going on with lamp posts and light posts in areas where already the infrastructure is there for the charging. And that my curiosity is because there's money available. And last year, the government made it a game changer. And we really ought to take a look at whether we can tap into the massive amount of money that's being spent. And I think it's a combination of a couple of things. One is, where is the traffic with regard to EV stations that are being installed now? The people who know that the best are the people who sell them, because they want to sell it. But basically 2/3 of the cost typically is installation and the wiring and power, not the actual physical plants. So there's a lot of money available, and I think it's really incumbent upon us to make sure we tapped into that.
and I'll just say to that, the stumbling block is we need a location before we can
Right.
apply for the funds, and that's kind of it's been discussed, but it's kind of been in hiatus. I'll just say
I
that.
wonder if that's an appropriate topic to put in the draft plan. Also in,
And I just want to caution that at this stage we can just have technical questions. I get the sense we're kind of going a little bit towards discussion, which we have to wait till after public comment for.
I would like to make a comment.
You can ask you can ask a technical question, but we can't do discussion until the time is, which is after public comment.
What, are you telling me that I can't make a comment, go in a different direction here?
No, you can't, that's correct. You can't make a comment quite yet because this point is we have technical questions or clarifications. After we have it for public comment, then you can discuss and comment on anything. Yeah, it's just the Brown Act requirement.
Well, I think the work that you've done is very commendable.
Thank you.
But I think that there are climate impacts that are coming that are going to render all of this moot. And we really have to prepare our citizens for the incredible heat and cold that's coming. That's all.
I do have another technical
Okay.
question. One of the focuses of the built environment right now is embodied carbon in buildings. We're finding that a lot of the wood buildings are off-gassing for enormous amounts of times and creating a lot of carbon. We don't really discuss embodied carbon and what we can do in the draft plan. Has that something that you all have looked at, or?
No.
Okay.
And certainly, when we open it up for discussion, if you have specific suggestions, and I'll say that this plan, there's really an early draft plan, and certainly there's, I think, things that need to be addressed and whatever, and you'll have that opportunity.
It's
Absolutely.
an excellent plan. So
Yeah.
it's extremely well done.
And I'm assuming we'll have a lot of opportunity in this entire commission to make significant alterations to the excellent start that's been done.
So,
Are
Chair
there
Morelli?
any other
Yeah.
technical questions for staff before we move to public comment on this? Alan, if you turn your mic off, please.
Oh, sorry.
No?
I had a
No
technical
sorries
question.
allowed.
I had a technical question for Travis.
Yes, sir.
If you could return us to, I think it's slide 3 or 4, it's that table, or, no, I'm sorry, it's the histogram of the emissions by source. Right there, thank you. So, I was impressed to see solid waste down in 2020 by such a significant fraction. And I was hoping that you could discuss that a little bit, because I frankly haven't been paying attention to it, I think, as much as you have.
I actually don't, I could only guess as to what it is. I haven't seen that specific data point in the RCPA. Part of it is people, I don't want to guess. Yeah. I think part of it was people were just buying less, although it was kind of offset by online shopping. So the whole thing is, to me, is a little suspect.
Yeah,
because
that's why I'm drawing
yeah.
attention to it, is that it, so, and part of this, the reason I brought us back to this display here is this gives us sort of the trend lines, but it should try to keep us focused on where the real opportunities and where the real challenges are, to address what Alan was talking about is coming at us fast. So, and it's premature in terms of any specific policy discussions about what actions we might be prioritizing, because the city only has so much time and money to spend on any of this. But we do have the ability to leverage the community to spend money and to leverage other dollars that might be available. So transportation is just sitting out there. And so I want us to try and keep ourselves prioritized on where the real opportunities are going to be.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Connell, do you have a technical question?
So
I want to make sure.
Yeah, fair enough. So I'm sort of segueing into talking about why I have the technical question,
Yeah.
but I guess it may be premature for us to talk too much tonight until we understand what's driving these data that we're looking at as a commission for the first time. And so, since we don't have definitive answers in front of us, we might want to think about our subcommittees over the next couple of months and then really dive into the prioritization issues at a subsequent meeting. That's why I asked that technical question.
Are there any other technical questions for staff on this before we turn to public comment? It's twice. It looks like I'm not seeing any of my colleagues with technical questions. So we would now call it open to public comment on this agenda item of the City of Sonoma Climate Action Plan.
I would like to
make a Alan.
comment.
Yeah.
I just want to commend commend the group for the work that they've done. I think it's very impressive. I wish it was done, you had done it 10 years earlier.
Thank you, Ellen. I'm sure all of us endorse that comment of applause to staff for how far we have come. I would simply note, and it's a bit of a technical question, I can make it as such, that the word action in the Climate Action Plan and the name action in the name of this commission are to me at the heart of why I'm taking time away from family to be here and to work on this topic. We need to move away from what our friend Greta Thunberg so cleverly says, blah, 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 and move into real action. And at least from me, and I suspect from all of my colleagues up here on the dais, you're going to be hearing a lot about proposed action items, understanding that we're a small city with a limited budget, but that we can be a real leader. Are there any members of the public who would like to participate on this action item?
There's one person on Zoom with a hand raised.
Thank you.
Wherever you would like to start, on Zoom or
I don't
here first.
Yes, was that a hand up? Yes, please come to. Let me try to do this for my first time. Please come up to the podium, state your name and your presence in Sonoma, and try to stay within the 3-minute rule before we move on. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Joel Hoyt, H-O-Y-T of Glen Ellen. I'm not sure if I should be congratulating you or offering you my condolences about being on the committee, but after reading the plan, I'm tending toward congratulations. So I haven't had a chance to fully digest what was in the plan, but the only thing is that there's a few things that jump out at me. I'd like to see, kind of low-hanging fruit. I'm not seeing anything about turning down streetlights in the community earlier. I'm not seeing anything about a community garden, transitioning to veganism. I'm glad to see that there's bike infrastructure in the plan. It'd be in a dream world. It'd be great for us to separate the bikes from pedestrians. I've run into that a lot. And within the town of Sonoma, the bicycle infrastructure is pretty solid, and I'd like where we're missing is from Sonoma to Santa Rosa to Petaluma. These are really. I know that this might be out of the jurisdiction of the city, but anything that we can do to make it safer to be on the road on a bike would be, again, on the, I'm not sure if the city of Sonoma can do anything about getting a spur line from the SMART train out to the Shelville area, but let's see, I think that kind of, let me just check here. Oh, I gotta say the state is way behind, and therefore that puts the community behind on gray water. There is good solid technology that would allow us to take gray water from the house and reuse it. It should be against the law to defecate and urinate in potable water. It's just outrageous. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your excellent comments. Are there other members of the public? Alan?
Is the gray water a part of the work that you've been doing?
It is not in there at this time.
Yes, there's one person on Zoom.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead,
Very
Fred.
good, thank you. My name is Fred Allebach. I live on 8th Street East, and I hope that you all received my public comment this evening and had a chance to look them over. When this commission was created, I asked the presenter, David Storr, was the planning director at the time, if climate justice was going to be in the purview of the commission, because I didn't see it in there anywhere in the letters of incorporation or the mission statement. And so at that time, David Storr very clearly said to the council that yes, climate justice would be in the purview of this commission, but I don't really see it anywhere in the plan here. And as a former member of the commission and climate community here working in the city, it was very difficult for me to try and put that on the map, so that now here I am with the creation of the commission, wondering if climate justice is going to be taken up. And I think that it's possibly up to you as commissioners whether you would decide to do that or not and put that on there, because I believe that that is indeed in your purview, and that I could find Mr. Storr on video saying that it is and assuring the council that it was. So now if climate justice is on the purview of the commission, if that's about the most vulnerable in the community not facing disproportionate effects of climate problems. And so it's clear that in Sonoma Valley and Sonoma, there are disadvantaged and vulnerable populations that would be feeling the effects of climate change. And so I'm here to ask you if you would please consider putting some sort of climate justice actions in your plan here that you go to work on, in particular, maybe about heat effects, fire effects, drought effects, and then you would also follow through that the city has got a trajectory now of looking at the springs and the valley as sort of one community, and the city and the county have a shared services initiative going that's this climate justice could play into, in particular because there is environmental justice community in the springs. And so I'm just trying to put a plug for this and see if people would be interested in working on that and finding some actionable items on this. And if you read my public comment and some of the attachments there, you might get some ideas on that. So thank you very much. It's good to see Travis and my other old friends on the commission, and I look forward to you guys doing some really good work. Thanks very much.
Thank you, former Chair Allebach, for the important comment. I will certainly, in my personal role, move strongly in this climate justice arena, particularly as it embeds within community engagement activities. I'm pleased to see some members of the public here tonight. I would like to see more, and I hope by making some noise, we'll generate a little bit more in the way of audience and involvement and community involvement. I would just note that I'm pleased to serve on a National Climate Justice Committee of a progressive veterans organization. I happen to be a Vietnam vet, called Common Defense US, and we have a National Climate Justice Working Committee that is very aggressive, working especially in West Virginia at the moment, an interesting state in this regard. We heard a little about West Virginia in the introductions. But in general, Fred's comments, I think, resonate with me, and he put a lot of work into the written materials that were provided.
Chair Morrell, Interim Director Laura Simpson would just like to comment on that.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Thanks, Travis. It's okay.
And would you introduce yourself,
Yes,
please?
I'm Laura Simpson, the Interim Planning Director. And I just wanted to mention, certainly environmental justice can be a component of the Climate Action Plan, but I also wanted to mention that we are moving ahead with the general plan update, and there is a component within the general plan of environmental justice. So that will be also looked at in the coming year or two as that progresses.
And I would also note, and thank you for that important comment, that the latest work moving forward on affordable housing and the RENA numbers and so on are very encouraging in this regard after some period of time that was a little less encouraging, let me put it that way. Commissioner Conlon, please.
Thank you. I want to thank the public for those both sets of excellent comments.
I'm sorry for jumping in. Are there no more public comments?
There are no more. We need to close it to the public. Oh,
I see more public comments. Would you please step up to the microphone? And may I, just before you start, is there some way to use this device?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not too strong on the idea of 3 minutes and 3 minutes only before the guillotine, but within reason. And when we get the next time with a large audience, we may move in that direction, and we couldn't figure out how to work this thing.
That's all right. We do that.
You do that.
we do that. Yep.
Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you. So my name is Norma Fogelberg, and it's spelled like Dan Fogelberg, if you know him, one of my cousins. And I'm a new Sonoma resident as of October, and I live on Las Casitas Court. So the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to follow up on your comment about congratulating you, because we really need to have your leadership right now, and also to thank you for doing what you're doing. And that includes you too, Travis, so thank you. I would like to see much more discussion and actions on the involvement of the community. I believe there are only two points on the chart, 2 action points for citizens' involvement. And that's where I think we could benefit all around. I've been to quite a few council meetings, and we're lucky if we get this kind of turnout. And I think if we focus on how to engage the community on this, and then continue that involvement in terms of being citizens and participating in government, it might be very helpful down the road. And I don't know if there'll be an opportunity later to say this, so I would just like to complete. A significant part of my work, I'm a transformational strategist, is working with clients on reducing and eliminating their fossil fuel and biochemical plastics for single-use plastics. And currently, my projects are focusing on SB 1383. And I'd like to see how we can apply the interactions that I have on a corporate level, like with Google and Facebook, to our community here, because the waste is significant that we could focus on and help to eliminate. So I've read the plan also, and I just want to throw my hat in the ring as a volunteer, especially in the area of citizen engagement, education, training, facilitation, communication, involvement, participation, like that. And I'm excited to get involved in this community. It's a beautiful town, and I'm in love with it already, and it's been such a short time. So I have your emails, all of you, and tomorrow I'm going to send a note to you so you know how to reach out to me. And I just wanted to personally introduce myself, and again to say thank you so much for your important leadership in this area.
Thank you for that excellent comment, and we do look forward to working with you on SB 1383 issues and more broadly the climate challenges. And I think as we push harder, my colleagues and I, to take this excellent draft plan and make it better and improve it and make it a bit more controversial by pushing a little on the action front, that we will get more community involvement. And later tonight, I may have a little bit to say personally about some ideas in this regard.
So you now have to close the public comment period?
Are there any other public comments from Zoom or in the audience? Seeing none, we now hereby close the public.
Now you can open it up.
And now we can open it up for commissioner comments on the draft action plan, is my
Unless someone
understanding.
wants to make a motion on this issue, I don't think it's really ripe for that, but otherwise you can just kind of open it up for.
I don't see ripeness
discussion.
either unless one of my colleagues wants to move forward with some kind of motion. What I understand now is it's our opportunity, and perhaps we'll start with Alan, who wanted to make comments earlier that now is the time after public comment period for the commissioners to weigh in on our comments on the initial reading of us this week on the Climate Action Draft Plan. Alan Nickel, Commissioner Nickel.
I just wanted to make a strong point that Greywater is a system that is really critical for the waste process. I'm more of an expert in building and transportation than I am in Greywater, but that seems to be an oversight. But once again, I think you've done the hard work, and but I think that now this commission is going to have to start dealing with impacts.
Thank you. Other commissioner comments on this agenda item? Commissioner Conlon.
Thank you. I was also I feel enthusiasm for the public comments that we've received tonight. I think everybody was on point. I think that we have a lot of work in front of us at this commission, but it sounds like we also have the community with us, at least a small initial contingent, and I think we really do need to build on that. I want to commend to Travis for really pulling together in this latest draft of this plan. It really has improved over time, and it's not perfect. It's not supposed to be a perfect final document. It's always going to be changing, and it's going to have to be adaptive to what the public decides is important, what the city council decides is important, and what is frankly possible. You know, we've just lived through COVID. Things change on us pretty quickly sometimes. We have to be able to adapt. So, so with respect to some of the specific things that public raised tonight, I felt that, well, let's talk about Fred's comments about environmental justice, because that's, there is in the matrix, the assessment and prioritization of the climate action screening criteria later in our agenda. There is some talk about some of these matters that Fred raised. So I think that is because staff has been sensitive to these concerns. To Ms. Simpson's comment about the general plan update, I do have a question, and there are pros and cons of whether in developing a general plan update to put the climate justice, the environmental justice issues in their own separate element, or whether to integrate them into the entirety of the plan at each element's specific level. Has that decision been made yet by City Council, or is that to be determined?
That hasn't been decided yet. We're at the initial stage of reviewing proposals, so we haven't selected a consultant yet, but that question can be asked and decided. Precisely.
So I think that we need to be aware of the pros and cons. We can talk about that in our subcommittees as we move forward with this, and perhaps around this in this body as well, once we reassemble, to address the concerns that Mr. Alabach raised. Now, with respect to Mr. Hoyt's excellent list of some low-hanging fruit and some other potential opportunities we need to be thinking about, I think that the plan as we've got it right in front of us now is a good start, but it's by no means complete. So I've written all of those things that you raised down, Mr. Hoyt, and I will be doing what I can to kind of keep them in the mix. And I encourage other members of the public to do this, to keep bringing the things that pop up in your minds as things that you think you might be able to individually work on. You work on with your neighbors, with your businesses, and that's how we're going to fix this problem, is we're all going to get together and work on it. It's not going to be Travis doing all the work for us. It's not going to be the commission doing everything ourselves. It's going to be all of us pulling together to do this. So that's my soapbox for tonight.
But there'll be more before we're done, I hope. Other commissioner comments at this point on the draft plan that we've had a chance initially to look at?
Made mine all
Philip.
at an inappropriate time, so.
It's your time now, sir.
Now, there are a few other comments which I can make offline and about ways to provide incentives to private businesses and people to help us reach our goals. And but I do think we can consider the issues I brought up before.
I think you should probably discuss them
Thank you,
here.
Phil.
Yeah.
All right.
And when you mean offline, I don't.
Well, little nits of ways to provide incentives. Instead, for example, there was a suggestion that you prohibit the building of any carbon fueling stations anymore. Well, there's ways to do carbon fueling and also require EV fueling. There are a lot of sources of public funds that we need to look at and include. And that's going to take some digging.
Excellent, thank you. Alan?
One of the issues I think that's really fundamental is, I mean, because we conceive the greenhouse gases, is transportation. And I don't believe that the electric car is going to save us. How many people in this room have an electric car? 2. And I think that we have to go to rail transit. And SMART is coming over to Napa, and we have a parking problem in the downtown. And if we can get our tourists to stop at the SMART station south of town, and then have a streetcar that takes them into Sonoma. So I think these are some of the things that need to be considered. A transit is kind of an ugly word because the bus is not very successful. And but having an open air trolley that's electric and that emits water and oxygen, this is what we need to do.
Thank you. Very provocative indeed, and moving the ball forward.
Just so
Philip?
the record's also clear, I will have an electric car when there's a EV station close to me. Right now, I don't have that, so.
Other commissioner comments on the draft action plan that we've just received in the last few days? Amber?
Let me look through my notes. I'm sure I have some.
Kendall, any thoughts at this point that you'd like to share with the group and with the audience?
I just wanted to say that I agree with some of the public comments about climate justice and involving the community more. I think this is a very important thing that we need to address, as climate change disproportionately affects Black, Indigenous, and Hispanic communities. And I agree that diversity, inclusion, and justice are all things that people my age strive for. So I'm here to represent those people and to make sure that there is more involvement. And I'm hoping to have more youth here in the future, so all of our ideas are represented. So that's all.
Thank you. Very, very important and provocative, and we hope to see many members of the youth community at our next commission meeting. Let's work on that together if possible. Other commissioner comments on the draft plan at this point?
So if I may, Chair Morrell, I think the only action item that we might maybe be able to take tonight would be to consider this draft report to be in final enough form that we would want to approve it and recommend it. And I personally don't get a sense from my colleagues yet, or from myself, that we're really there. And I also don't think staff has indicated that to us either. It feels like we all need to kind of pull up our sleeves and really dig into this, consider the comments the public has made, and really re-engage over this between now and budget time. So that's my recommendation, that no action be taken on this item tonight.
That's certainly consistent with my views. I've been holding off to hear from my colleagues first. Having had some experience with the draft climate action plan over the last, feels like weeks, but it's months, I want to offer a few just initial comments to reinforce what Commissioner Conlon just said. We're nowhere near ready to approve this, even in draft form. Transportation section is missing any commentary about potential parking on the plaza, and no mention of plaza events and the vehicle miles traveled associated with city-sponsored events on our wonderful plaza. Second, there is no mention in the draft plan that I saw, it's a lot of pages, I might have missed it, of the original City Council action measures which have been adopted. There are 22 of them on the books. We need to either agree that they belong on the books or get them the devil off the books. Enforcement matters. I bring that to you from my years at EPA. People pay attention when there's enforcement. When 22 measures are on the books not being taken seriously, it degrades the entire process. Third, biochar, elemental carbon used for carbon sequestration, is mentioned in the Climate Action Plan, but assigned a low impact status. I believe it has a high status, and I'll be pushing some specifics in that area. Next, adding actions in schools. My read of the plan didn't show any actions in our schools. Effective efforts to reduce emissions and involve students and faculty and parents in effective climate mobilization actions across the board. Next, we need action items to be added to involve the Sonoma business community more in effective climate mobilization. Many of the specific actions we saw for the business community on SB 1383 organics measure management could be adopted for climate actions in our restaurants, in our businesses, at the Chamber of Commerce, across the board, as we build these alliances between the environmental community, the business community, and regular citizens. Finally, a note about gray water, a very important possible addition, and I would say rainwater capture belongs in that thinking as well. We now, those of you who want to go see it, Flowery School now has a rainwater collection system installed by Sonoma Ecology Center, and it provides an excellent model of what we can do to capture rainwater, which will save greenhouse gases as well as be otherwise good for the environment. That's just a quick look that I have brought in sensing that we've got a lot more work to do in our ad hoc committees, and we'll bring a lot more detail back to the game in a couple of months at the next commission meeting. Are there any other commissioner comments before we close this agenda item, which I believe we're at that point?
And if I may just
Yes, you may.
add one thing. Oh, sorry, Laura. I just wanted to just say the next items will kind of elaborate a bit on what the next steps would be. And so just to let you know that is part of the plan to allow the commissioners to really, bring forward and prioritize. And if there really is something absent that needs to be, that could be brought forward.
Right.
Yes.
And my sense is that we're premature in this meeting to have a lot of, that's why I went very quickly over some interesting and provocative ideas that deserve careful attention. They may not all be great ideas, but it's the kinds of things that aren't there now that potentially deserve to be in there.
I have a question.
Sure.
We only have 4 meetings over this coming year, and so there's like 6 weeks apart. How do we continue to work together without having a meeting?
That's the next agenda item, is to break up into ad hoc subcommittees to do
I see.
work through the committees.
I see.
Right. Great question. Yeah.
Excellent. Any other comments at this point on this agenda item before we move on? This is agenda item 3, I believe, and we're 3.3, and we're ready to move to agenda item 3 without objection to move to 3.4, which is discuss and consider next steps in climate action planning. I see a staff report. I believe that would precede public comment on this 3.4. Is that right, Dr. Wagner?
Actually, I'm going to give a very brief presentation. So the staff report is just background, so I'm going to give a presentation. Very
And then
brief.
we'll do public comment after the
that.
presentation and before commissioner comment.
It goes presentation, staff presentation, technical questions about the presentation, public comment, then commissioners.
Technical questions
Yes.
recognized.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so the next step is to try to move, well, 2 things. One is to move the plan forward, but the other component is how to, one of the requirements of the commission is to provide, the language is a scorecard to the city manager on emissions in time for the budget. So that's something that's going to have to be worked on over the years. What is this scorecard going to look like? There is no information other than that word itself. But one of the things moving forward is to present some sort of prioritized list that would be a recommendation to the city manager in time for budget considerations. So it's to create 5 ad hoc subcommittees. So the first one is community engagement, which is probably the most important, one of the most important things, because there has been very little community engagement. And that's because we have requested the community to come to us, or the public to come to us, and that has not worked, and that's not unusual. In the planning process, we need to go out and engage the community. And how is that done? There's a couple basic ideas in the Climate Action Plan, but that's going to be up to the ad hoc subcommittee. It can be workshops, questionnaires. There's all sorts of approaches that the planning department has experience with, and staff would be operating this along with commission members if that makes the most sense, because you'll be making those recommendations. So that's one ad hoc subcommittee. The next one is transportation, or you can see my little box down there. There's a maximum of 2 climate action commissioners each. That's just a Brown Act requirement. The staff report said that there could be other members. I have been corrected that that is not allowed, but you can talk, discuss, meet, consult with non-CAC members. They're just not members of the ad hoc subcommittee. And it will require, because there's 5, it will require that some of you will be on multiple subcommittees. It's a non-voting, so everyone can, all of you can be on there. So Kendall, hopefully you'll be on 3 or 4. And so I just wanted to point that out. So transportation, and transportation is public transportation, people-powered transportation, EV charging, all that. Number 3 is buildings and solid waste, just combining those 2 together. 4, combining 2 of the smaller ones within the Climate Action Plan itself right now, which is water and carbon sequestration. And 5 is government operations. Oh, okay.
Just a clarification?
Mm-hmm.
These subcommittees, it seems to me that there's going to be kind of 2 sectors. One is the existing conditions, and then the potential for change is another aspect of that. Do you see what I'm saying?
I don't fully understand what you're saying.
Advanced planning and existing planning.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Well, kind of, actually, could I just finish a little bit
Of
more?
course, yeah, of course.
And if that, I'm going to try to answer your question, and if that doesn't answer your question, then let's revisit that, if that's okay? Okay, good. So the charge of the ad hoc subcommittee at this time, because the goal here is to prepare something suitable for the city manager by this budget time, and then work on the scorecard, is to assess and evaluate the respective climate actions. The recommended criteria that you were recommending that you use is in the agenda packet. So that's the numerical scoring system, which is, it's a matrix scoring system that we use in planning quite a bit. And the suggestion is you develop a priority list of the top 3 or 4 in each source at this time. So that would be 3 or 4 in transportation, in water, solid waste, so forth and so on. And the important thing is that there are budget constraints. So many of these they have budget implications. There's budget constraints, so that's the recommendation, is that you focus on the top priorities for this year, and then going forward that can at least be started this year. And the suggestion is you pick 1 each from the short, medium, and long-term implementation time frame. And it's just a recommendation. So the subcommittees are requested to prepare and submit a written brief to the sustainability coordinator by March 31st. So that would mean that you would have to meet, set up a time that you could meet, whether it's in person or Zoom or whatever, your 2 members. that written report will become part of the agenda packet, and thus will be a public document. And then you will be requested to give a very brief presentation at the next CAC meeting, which is scheduled for April 12th, 6 o'clock, same room. And then at that meeting, the full commission will discuss, prepare a recommended list at that April 12th meeting, is what is currently proposed. Just to give you some future steps is, so April and May would be when you present the list of recommended priority actions to the city manager. That would come from the commission itself. In the spring, you would conduct public engagement activities. And again, you typically would want public engagement earlier, but we're on a tight deadline here. This is why we started the commission so quickly after being appointed, is trying to meet that timeline so we can get moving. So that's why it seems a little bit out of order. During the summer is refine, enhance, and update the climate action plan. August 9th, which is a tentatively scheduled commission meeting, you would potentially or consider approving the recommendation of the climate action plan to the city council. And fall would be a presentation to the city council. And then November 8th meeting, the climate action would determine the next steps. Now, Commissioner Nickel, did I address your question? Because I just wanted to kind of do, okay.
We have long-term and short-term.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure. Okay, so that concludes staff presentation.
So at this point, if I'm getting the rules proper, we open it up for technical questions
To staff.
for staff
Yeah.
on the staff presentation we
Yeah.
have just received.
Yeah, and just for clarification, that means there is no discussion on items. It's just a technical question. If there's none, that's fine, and then we go to public comment. Yeah.
Right, which will be followed by commissioner comments on
Exactly,
this agenda.
yeah.
I can learn this.
Yes.
Are there any technical questions from my colleagues? Amber, you're on.
Technical question for who is allowed to serve on the subcommittees. Does that include our alternative over in the audience?
I'm going to have to ask the city clerk on that one. I actually don't know the answer to that. Yeah, sorry. That's an excellent question. No one's ever asked that before, so that makes it a super good question.
A similar question that raised for me, may we invite members of the public to join the ad hoc subcommittees for meeting and discussion?
It was explained to me that no, because then they would be public meetings. But you can consult and discuss, but otherwise it would be a public meeting and it has to be agendized and
Right.
how it goes.
So they wouldn't be members of the ad hoc subcommittee, but they could be consulted and discussant with the members of the subcommittee.
Not at the same time, at the same place. But you as an individual could meet with them, the other person could meet with them, but when you meet together to discuss it, there cannot be a group.
Even though it's only 2 commissioners for Brown Act reasons of not going to 3.
That's the way it was explained to me, that then it would be a public meeting subject to the Brown Act.
Makes it difficult to meet schedules in an effective way. Pardon me, sir? And get sufficient community engagement by being out at a picnic table on the plaza discussing this with a big sign up and a notice in the ID ahead of time, for example. Commissioner Conlon,
Thank you.
comments?
Yeah, on that technical question, that would, I believe, represent a change in practice for the city of Sonoma in my experience, that previous ad hoc committees of the city council do in fact engage in data collection from the community, which allows them to consult with members of the public, members of their constituencies, to be sure that they can make productive use of their time as an ad hoc committee. So I would encourage staff to reach out to legal counsel to confirm or deny what that interpretation that clearly could be the new interpretation. But it would be problematic, I think.
I would like that information back from staff sooner rather than later, please.
I will do that, and just to clarify, you can consult, you can discuss, you can Zoom, but it was the way it was explained to me, and I would definitely verify this with the council, is that you all can't get together in a meeting. Oh, so, but I will.
My understanding is that no more than two of us can get together at any one time outside.
That's also
of
correct. Yeah.
Brown Act meeting, but that you're saying we can't physically meet with a person, but we can talk to them have a conference call on the phone.
Why don't we just
It's very
halt it right there, and
Yeah,
I
it's-
will get clarification.
It's opaque
sent
to me
out
at this
you.
time.
Yeah.
I think it has become for everyone.
Yeah.
Let's see the.
We're
other-
on technical questions at this point before public comment.
That's correct. Yeah.
So.
Right, the other technical question that I had, if I may, is the schedule that you presented indicates that we wouldn't be finalizing our implementation plan until roughly November, after the city council formally adopts whatever they decide to do pursuant to the work of this commission. I'm troubled by the fact that we're supposedly operating under an emergency mandate, and that it's been several years now since we've actually done anything. So I would encourage my colleagues tonight to think about the nature of what emergency means to us, and perhaps, since it sounds like we can't act on items tonight that are not on our agenda, that's my understanding of the Brown Act, we can't say, staff, please come back with an ordinance to do X, Y, and Z. We can't do that tonight. But I do think we might need to consider expediting perhaps just one or two actions that may even predate the formal adoption of a more comprehensive multi-year strategy. So those are my comments about emergency tonight. I hope others may be able to think about that and have hopefully better things to say on it than I.
So the response to that technical question, this is just recommended that the commission can wait 3 years to do it or not present anything to the city manager. It's, it's not a requirement, but this is just a suggested guideline to help you move forward.
And if I could just tie that up, thank you,
Yes,
Travis. I
please.
appreciate the clarification there, because I know that we're struggling with the comprehensiveness, the intersectionality of the challenge in front of us. However, we also have the emergency mandate, so it may require a little more nuance as we move forward.
And the planning director?
Just to add briefly to that, part of the role of the subcommittees is in prioritization. When those recommendations come forward, those are going to be considered by the council in the budget process, which is for the next fiscal year. So that fiscal year begins July 1. So it's actually, you would be incorporating potentially actions into this coming fiscal year.
There are other technical questions for staff on this part of the presentation. Hearing none, I would open this up for public comment on this agenda item 3.4. Yes, please step to the podium and introduce yourself. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Patricia Farrar-Vivas, Councilwoman for the City of Sonoma, and I live at 837 4th Street East. But I actually understand from my latest training is you don't have to state where you live. That you actually can't even ask people where they live, supposedly. So we should check on that as well, too. So one of the things, so first of all, just really excited that we have such great expertise on the council, and I'm really glad to see, even though there's a bit of a gap, that there is a spread. We're kind of barbelled in the age spectrum, and it's great to see, that we have at least the barbells there, and I would certainly love to see much more community engagement. So I actually have one thought that might be a good suggestion, is there a possibility as you develop these ad hoc committees to actually have some public meetings with ad hoc meetings? If this Brown Act action is in some way not allowing that to happen because 25 people wanted to be on this commission. So it shows how much great interest there is in this commission. And a lot of those people that requested to be on the commission also had great expertise. So it was not an easy decision, and, you know, really trying to think of the makeup of the commission. So that's one suggestion. The other suggestion that I have in light of some of the comments from the community is that as each of these ad hoc commissions are meeting, that they consider, climate justice within the work that they're doing. So that even though that's not already specifically outlined, that is actually part of the consideration for each of the ad hoc committees, so that that doesn't end up coming later down the road, because we actually would want to ensure that communities of color have there's some consultation with these committees, with the communities of color, BIPOC communities, about what are their main priorities in these areas. And then I think that the other, I thought I had one more, but I think that that's really it around the public, have some public meetings. Oh, I had one other question, technical question. So I was considering that I would be able to participate in one or two of these ad hoc committees. I'm not sure if that's possible.
It was not our understanding that that was possible, but we
Okay.
will double check.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thank you all for your service.
And thank you for your service, madam. Yes. Next up, comment from the public.
So my name is Michael Heffler, and if I have to say where I live just down the street here. And I think there's enough. Well, first of all, thank you all. It's public service is a wonderful thing, and you're actually all doing something that's very, very worthwhile. So, and you don't often get thanked. So, thank you. The issue of community engagement and different projects, and I understand you have constraints that you're trying to look at and figure out, and it's sounds like a real pleasure to have to do that. But figuring out how to get public engagement with different projects is a good lever to do that. Now, whether that's done through specific meetings or some ad hoc method could be a very good way of sort of opening up the thought process to not just think, but get that kind of engagement, as you know, and you know, and you know, and you all know in half a second. David actually suggested to me, I did a big project. I just moved here about 2 years ago. And I did a big project where I lived in New Jersey, where we actually put together an electric co-op with 8 towns along a proposed pipeline route. And we actually stopped the pipeline and went all the way to the Supreme Court. So it was very, very community engaged. And it was very community engaged because of the controversy. So I said to David a few weeks ago, I did this project. I have trouble actually sitting here listening to all these different things. This is not my personality. My personality is to find something to do and take it and run with it. But we discussed doing a microgrid in one or more communities in Sonoma, and using that as a way of both educating people, helping the community, and doing sort of a beta test of getting rid of some fossil fuels. So I'm sure that's not the only idea, but that certainly is one idea, and I wanted to bring that up. But coming up with a way, given your constraints, of actually engaging the community and engaging this council with people in the community in a way that's constructive would be a great short-term thing to figure out. So that's what I wanted to suggest. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Very provocative indeed. Are there other public comments on this agenda item before we go to commissioner comments?
There's one person on Zoom.
On Zoom, yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Go ahead,
Good
Fred.
evening, Chair Morrell and Commissioners. Fred Alabak again. As I listened to the last agenda item, I started to become concerned that this train was going to leave the station without adequately addressing climate justice or discriminating what that is different than environmental justice. And so I was really glad to hear Kendall say that that's something that was important to her and her age set, and to hear Councilwoman Farrar Rivas coming back that, and Tom and David Morrell too. So I would like to offer to, and also I'm a little, I don't know what to say, that's being collapsed into community engagement. Now I understand that a lot of these other items are quantifiable things that can have reduction targets and you can put numbers to them, but here you have a human element, and I think that it's really worth exploring how you could find some ways to quantify the climate justice elements and then act on them here in Sonoma Valley, so that it's not, you know, something that gets pushed into community engagement and then forgotten about. So I would just really encourage you to take particularly Kendall's lead on this. And here's the young people, here's your Greta Thunberg here on the dais with you, and you got backing from a city councilwoman, that this is important, and I would like to participate and help make it important and put it on the map and make it part of this commission's works. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Fred. Are there any other Zoom comments from the public? Michael, step to the podium again, please.
On the climate justice issue, I've been, speaking with the Environmental Defense Fund, and one of the issues that they're looking at, and they're, one of the bigger and better organizations involved in these things, in climate change. One of the things that they're looking at is PG&E has said that they want to electrify more. They want to get rid of natural gas as part of the G part of the PG&E part. And what that means is people who are well-to-do can take out the appliances in their house that are gas-based, and that will happen, and there's encouragement from the IRA to do that. But then the price of gas goes up, and that's borne by the people who are less well-to-do. So EDF is working on that problem. They're working with the state legislature on that problem. It might be another avenue to get a very strong organization to get engaged in this. So I'm done.
Thank you, Michael. Other public comments at this point?
It does not appear so.
I don't see any in the room and nor in the Zoom, so we will move to commissioner comments on this agenda item, which will then lead us to the selection of membership on the ad hoc committees, as I understand the process that's underway.
Yep, that's the next agenda item. Yep.
I want to pick up on
Philip.
Michael's comments. I
Yes,
didn't get your last name, but
Philip,
I'll let
please.
you after.
Hefferty.
As a former East Coaster, about 10 years ago, I heard a presentation from somebody from the California Electric Commission, who was a deputy commissioner, talking about microgrids and battery storage capacity. And I went back to my friends in Pennsylvania and I said, when do you think Pennsylvania will ever have anybody in the government studying microgrids and battery capacity? It still hasn't happened. So you pick the right side of the country to live on if you have those interests.
Thank you. I feel the same way, having spent many years in New Jersey teaching there. I like it fine. I especially like it from 3,000 miles away. Any other commissioner comments before we're moving now to the commissioner comments on this ad hoc committee situation? Commissioner Conlon.
Thank you. So I'm mulling the 5 categories recommended for ad hoc subcommittees. And I think obviously community engagement is going to be needed in all of them. I'm responding to also one of the public comments about the idea that we almost need to be responsive to what the community has the capacity to do on a volunteer basis too. And so it may not be a high priority, but if we've got a super zealous group in the community that wants to make something happen and it doesn't cost staff time and it doesn't cost commission time, why wouldn't we encourage that independent activity? So, so I realize that it's important to, this is almost like, yes, community engagement is important, but climate justice is really important too. I don't want to segregate these things in a separate ad hoc. But maybe they do deserve extra attention to be sure that they don't get only cursorily, done well in transportation, but not done so well in buildings or some other set of those things. The other idea that comes to me is that having looked at the municipal, well, we did the municipal greenhouse gas inventory, David Leland and myself, for the city a couple of years ago now. And, the remaining buildings are important. The city operates its own buildings, but the city also operates fleets. I guess it does make sense to drill into government operations as a special ad hoc, even though it's a small fraction of the budget. The city does need to lead by example and set an example for the leading businesses of the community as well. So those are just some, obviously still preliminary thoughts. I just wanted to kick the ball off thinking how others might respond to those things.
Thank you, Tom. Other comments from my colleagues?
How are we going to?
Alan?
How are we going to assign people, or they're going to volunteer? How is that going to work out?
I think once we have finished our comments, we'll move into a process of self-selecting and or appointing two, but not more than two members to each of these defined ad hoc committees. That's my understanding under Brown Act constraints. But I wanted to make sure we have comments open on the process first. Let me add a couple of personal comments. I'm feeling the structure we're being presented as a new commission is being heavily driven by a July 1st budget deadline. And combined with Brown Act constraints, that's not encouraging to acting effectively in the face of a climate emergency. I don't have a lot of magic to come up with an answer to that puzzle, but I'm pretty unhappy with the puzzle, speaking personally, and there may be other colleagues who feel the same way. I want to be sure that as we choose the two commissions on which we can serve with one of our colleagues, that we not be pigeonholed into those. If we're not on transportation, we have every right to be dealing with transportation in the next open meeting. We may need more than 4 meetings of this group agendized in order to move forward. If we have an emergency, and I do believe we do, then, and we face a Syria, I feel like I'm wearing handcuffs with the Brown Act, and I know I'm not alone in that regard by any means, but where there are ways to work around it, which is more of these meetings, and maybe one even agendized and held out on the plaza during the a Tuesday evening farmer's market at a table. There are a number of things we can do that show some leadership and not be stuck in the same rut we've been in on climate in this little town for 4 or 5 years. If we sound grumpy, so be it. I'm old enough to be grumpy and get away with it. So that's kind of where I'm at on this. I guess there is a specific question that I'd like legal guidance from the city on, both council and council. Can one ad hoc committee member meet with the public? Not just personally whispering at Pete's over a coffee, but again, my metaphor is at a picnic table or a table we bring from home on the plaza. in front of City Hall on a Thursday afternoon or something and put up a sign, public come in, we want to talk about X. We're here to make decisions on climate action, not sitting on our duffs, and we want you to come in and talk to us about it and publicize that kind of thing in the IT. It's not an agendized meeting, I gather. Can one do that? And I guess we need legal guidance on whether that's possible, because otherwise we have no public comment that's really meaningful. And with all due respect to 3 minutes and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members of the public who are here in the audience this evening, that's a pretty small percentage out of 10,000. So there are things we can do to act that we recognize it's a goddamn emergency, and pardon my French. So on purpose. So those were some of my specifics on this item on the agenda.
If we
Reactions to my getting grumpy?
If we were the Public Safety Committee, it would be analogous to being told we can't meet with the police chief.
If I may, for clarification.
Of course.
I believe that, I mean, as in other commissions, you know, you are welcome, of course, to speak to public, you know, members of the community, any organization. You're welcome to do research, to, it is helpful if you disclose when you come back to the meeting that you've met with those groups. It's helpful for the full group to know that you just say, you know, I've met with this group or that group, and that's typical on any commission. So it is definitely allowed and encouraged as well.
So 2 of us on an ad hoc committee can't do that without agendizing. It was what I'm hearing. Potentially, that's been the guidance an hour ago, but 1 of us certainly can. And we can do so wearing our commissioner hat, not hiding it.
Yes, but we will confirm
Just so we're
about the
clear,
ad hoc.
'cause-
We'll confirm about the ad hoc.
Right, and
as well.
Brown Act is tough, and we don't want Brown Act violations by any means. On the other hand, we want significant public involvement, and it's an emergency. So tying your hands behind your back and then trying to throw a softball ain't easy. Yeah, please step to the podium, and I'm forgetting your name, but I know you're the alternate on the commission. So welcome.
Leo McCloskey.
Leo,
alternate
thank
on
you,
the
sir.
committee. I have a question. What is the emergency? I'm a climatologist, but what is the emergency?
Well, the initial response to that, without spending a lot of time, you and I, would be that the city of Sonoma has adopted a climate emergency resolution. So the emergency is defined in that resolution quite articulately.
You know what? One thing I can see is that the government is here, and we're the commissioners, and they're trying to keep 1 foot ahead of the next. I took a look at the Sonoma, Napa County Regional GHC and other reports put out by other cities, and I don't think it's an emergency because our numbers are so small. Now, the emergency, that is in terms of greenhouse gas emissions by our vehicles, our buildings. We are like minuscule numbers compared to, say, Napa, the city of Napa or Napa County. And so I think there's something going on where we have to get 1 foot ahead of the next. The agenda items that we have, they seem reasonable, and they're not even as many agenda items are in the Napa County reports. So, and then there are a lot of new things coming up with climate justice, which I don't see in any of the government activity that I perused before I came here as a rehearsal. So it might be interesting to look at other government activity, other city councils, other counties, and look at what did they do. They have a lot more money to hire consultants from, who are working in Sacramento, who have really great data, who are using big systems data to make very accurate projections for wealthy Napa County, which has a lot of interest in the wine industry and getting the climate emergency correct. So I think we might be mixing some of our issues. We could keep 1 foot ahead of the next. And I would advocate that the agenda items, the 5 agenda items, maybe plus 1 more, that seems pretty, like ambitious, and that we would be making progress. Sometimes the best managers are those who keep 1 foot ahead of the next for the longest amount of time. Just an idea.
Thank you very much. And different versions of the perspective of what constitutes an emergency and what you do about it are certainly welcome.
If I understand the way the plan and some of the suggestions were laid out, they came from other city councils and other already adopted acts in other areas, correct? So we could even dive into that. You know, we have the research, so we could further dive into it and see how they did it, see who they talked to. So that side of it has already been done, so that's helpful as well, I think.
Just to clarify, the answer is yes at this level, but not to the deep level. And so the focus is to prioritize and then do that deep dive to figure out how it could be implemented. What are the costs at this stage? But over the longer stage, should be done probably on all the items. So great question.
Right, and there certainly is a lot to be learned from looking at Napa actions and looking at what Healdsburg has done in Petaluma and other colleague cities in terms of their dealing with it. I would just note that we've been spinning our wheels rather ineffectively in the city of Sonoma for a number of years, and that I think, and certainly for me, and I anticipate for my colleagues, we're not here to just spin wheels again. We have other things to do with our evenings. And so I'd like at least to have us make real progress in dealing with a climate challenge, if that's a better and more acceptable word for some in the audience than a climate emergency. Tom Conlon?
So with this is a good discussion. I think, you know, we are finding our feet tonight as a commission, and obviously figuring out just the procedures. But we are on the next steps agenda item. So I think the way in my mind that I'm resolving some of this conflict I hear in the room that I have in my own head that I share with the chair is that we should ask our chair tonight in developing with staff the next agenda to take this conversation tonight into account as developing the next steps and what does end up on the next agenda. It may be that between now and then we do have these ad hocs formed and we do have these discussions in the ad hocs, and some of that information can get back to staff and can be part of a streamlined progress forward in advance of our next meeting, which is in the right time frame to be engaged in by the city council at time of budget. So that's how I'm resolving in my head this discussion tonight. I hope that makes sense to people.
Helpful to me. Other comments from our colleagues? I think at this point, then, not hearing any, move to the actual selection of members of the ad hoc committees. I believe that's the next agenda item. Does that require public comment and so on? Where are we in terms of the sequence of Brown and Roberts rules determinations on this process?
Because it is agenda item on the regular calendar, yes. So I'll just say briefly.
I thought so.
Thank you, Chairperson Morell. As staff discussed earlier, we will need to create and populate the ad hoc subcommittees. So at this point, you would open it up for public, if there's any technical questions about that. If there are none, then you go to public comment.
Going once, twice, technicals. Public comment on this process of putting names into the ad hoc committees and getting them moving to do the work that they need to do. So much of the work before our next overall public meeting would be done by these ad hoc subcommittees. Public comments there.
Does not appear. He is on, but his hand is not raised.
Hi, Fred. Let's then move to the selection. I guess we're going to take them one at a time. It's a little unclear to me as to...
Yeah, you need to close the public comment.
The comment is closed.
So I have a recommendation on process if the chair will entertain it.
Yes, sir.
So I was thinking that we're likely to have lots of attention for one category and maybe less for others, and it might be good to get a sense of who's interested in what by a show of hands or some other informal process, and then talk about the pros and cons of who actually ends up on various subcommittees.
That sounds like an excellent suggestion to me. I don't have the list of 5 in front of me. Here they are in the small print that even with my glasses on. So let's take a quick look at the commission members
On our screens.
by topic. It looks like, let's put public engagement, use the chair's prerogative to put public engagement last, not first. Let's deal with the technical features first, like transportation or buildings, or I'm trying to remember what they all are.
We can pull it up, I think, on the
If
screen.
we can pull it up, we're going to go in order with public engagement being at the back end rather than the front end. So let's start with transport. What I'd like to do is have people say they'd like to be, commissioners, which ones they'd like to be on. If we have less than 2, we'll go back to recycle. If we have 3 or 4 on one, then we'll have to figure out a way to arm wrestle it down to 2 for Brown Act constraints. Unless there's objection to going that way, that would be what I would propose. Going once, twice, I don't see a lot of objection. So, Transportation Ad Hoc Subcommittee.
Do you want to just go down the line and see what people?
Well, let's go by, what I'd like to do is go by topic and then go down the line. We could start right to my left on transportation, yes or no? And then we'll hone it back down.
Something that I have experience in.
So that's a yes for Philip. Alan?
I have a big background in transportation.
Yep, I take that as a yes.
No, I don't have a lot of experience with transportation.
Okay. Are there, Amber, transportation?
I would bow to the other two.
Tom?
Yeah, so I currently serve on the Sonoma County Transportation Authority's Citizens Advisory Commission, have for the last 7 years, and recently attended the Vision Zero Action Plan meetings. I've been
So that's a
attending them
yes.
for a full year.
That's
So
a yes as a possible.
I am technically prepared to be on this committee, and I do think it's a pretty important committee, and it's the one that I prioritized as my top priority for the city.
Right. And I have some interest in this topic, but I will pass at the moment. We have 3 names. Let's go through.
What category are you
Talking about transportation as a
Transportation.
technical category? Or?
Yeah. The next one is buildings and solid waste. Let's go the opposite direction, starting with Tom. Yes or no in terms of throwing your hat in that ring?
Yeah, I'm willing to serve. I have a deep background in building energy efficiency and now greenhouse gas emissions. I wrote a paper on embodied energy
Yes, sir.
in buildings. And I have attended the zero waste meetings for
Excellent.
the county for a
Okay.
while.
Philip?
But I'm not as
Okay.
I'm not as hung up.
We're
on
we'll sort it out once we get names of those who are willing to have their hats in these rings.
Definitely buildings
Yeah,
and
so-
solid waste. Both.
That's a yes. Alan? Also a yes?
Transportation and building.
Buildings and solid waste is this category. Would you
And
like to
solid
be
waste?
considered for that category?
I'm not following.
We're trying to get names of those commissioners who would like to be on these, and then if we have less than 2, we'll struggle how to fill it, and if we have more than 2, we'll struggle how to reduce it. So I'm trying to sort of get who would like their hat in that ring, and then we'll deal with the numbers. That can be between 0 and 5. So we're at, for Allen, buildings and solid waste, would you like your hat in that ring?
Yeah,
Yes.
solid waste is not my expertise, but buildings are.
Well, they've combined them for us, so we'll have to live with
Yeah.
that. Kendall, buildings and solid waste?
Yes.
No.
No. Amber?
I think we have ample interest in that one.
All right, that's a no. Okay, the next one, where's my, here it is, right up here. Water and carbon sequestration, water and carbon. Let's start on the other end. Amber, yes or no?
Yes.
That's, Kendall?
If no one else was able to fill this subcommittee, I would be interested, but otherwise, no.
That's a yes with a question mark. Alan?
They're both 2 very important components. I mean, yes.
Yes, a hat in the ring. We'll go to subdividing the ring next. Philip?
Water only to the extent of the built environment, so
Yeah.
I would say probably no.
Okay, Philip's a no. Tom? Water and carbon sequestration?
I would say yes to carbon sequestration if the city had potential to be significant in that area. I'm up serving now on the new climate revenue measure committees on land and water, which are looking
Okay.
at that issue.
Well-
But I don't think I want to put my hat in the ring for
Oh.
the city of Sonoma. Thank you.
Okay, so that's out. And I will put my hat in that ring because of my work in carbon and biochar. And the next one is government operations. We'll start at Tom and work our way back.
Like Kendall, I would be happy to serve. I don't need to serve here, but I have worked with Travis directly a little bit on some of the work that he's done to date, and I'm happy to serve if there's a need.
Philip, yes or no?
I think that's probably the last thing I should.
Okay, that's a no. Alan?
I'm a bit of an anarchist.
That's a better answer.
I take that as an attractive no. Kendall
No.
and Amber.
Yes.
Amber, yes. Okay. Okay. Sue, we have 4 potential participants in water and carbon sequestration and need to get it down to 2. Let's start with the easier ones. We have 3 on transportation. Philip, well, it could be 4 if I put my hat in that ring. Philip, Alan, Tom, and David. This process is not going to be easy. Would anyone like to move away from transportation, given the overall allocation we're looking at? That would be the first question, between Philip, Alan, Tom, and myself. I can take my name off of there, so that'll make it slightly easier. Do we have any volunteer to step aside? Philip, Alan, Tom? No such volunteers. We'll have to take a vote or some craziness. Okay, we'll come back to that. Next process, solid waste and buildings, Philip, Alan, and Tom. Do we have anyone who wants to pull their hat out of that ring?
I'd be willing to do so.
Tom has pulled his hat. So Philip and Alan, we have a winner for 2 names on that one. This is fun. Tongue in cheek. Water and carbon, we have Amber, Kendall, Alan, and David. Alan, if you're on that one, that's your 2, and you won't be considered on transportation.
I'd keep my vote on transportation.
Okay, I thought I might get you off that way. We still have Amber, Kendall, and David on water and carbon. And we still don't know whether Leo is going to be on these ad hoc committees or not either, do we? But they're only 2 each, so that's a whole process. So, Kendall, you were a question mark on that one, so
Yeah,
are you willing to
Yes.
withdraw your chapeau from that one?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, well, we have Amber and David on water and carbon. We're back to transportation, but let's see if we can, we have Philip, Alan, and Tom. Tom isn't on any of the others yet. Are there 5 of them or 4? I'm only showing 4.
We skipped the community
Community
engagement one.
Oh, community engagement is the 5th one, and we gotta come back to that too. So, and people can't serve on more officially than 2, so that's, who's interested in community engagement? I'll bet everybody is.
I am interested.
Kendall and Amber. See, there's a lot of interest.
I think it would be really beneficial for Kendall, and if there is someone else on the committee that would like to be on that, since it looks like I am on 2 already.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. And Alan and Philip are already competing on the transportation.
But I think community engagement is really something we all want to do.
Yes, of course.
We have to have a
Yeah.
through the chair. We have to have a subcommittee to discuss it between now and our next meeting, but obviously the work of all of these subcommittees is going to come back before this body.
Oh, of course. Of course. And community engagement is going to be constant in the process. So, let's see. Government operations, we have Tom and Amber potentially. That would put Tom in two of the committees. We still have Tom, let's focus on transportation. I don't know how we,
Who are the players?
Philip, Alan, and Tom are, have to have one removed from this, from the process.
Can one of us be a deputy?
Well, I think it's terribly important that we're not, any of us as climate action commissioners have something important to say about all of these. I do not intend to be silent on transportation, as you'll hear later tonight when we get into final comments in the agenda item, whatever the hell the number is, number 4. So, but I don't need to be on the committee. So,
Do you want to talk about why we want to do it?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Let's do that. That'll be really interesting. Let's start with Philip with that good suggestion.
No, I used to be a transportation attorney. I was in the house at a transportation company, but mainly through the work I've been doing with EV chargers, also have.
Transportation is such a huge problem.
It's like number one, yeah.
I think we should allow 3, but
We
can't.
can't.
I guess
We can't. We can only do 2.
These are Brown Act constraints that make life difficult at times. We will clearly pay a lot of attention to this in the commission meetings when we have all of us here able to speak up and to express our opinions. No matter what happens, as chair, I will insist on that.
So, I don't know what else to say other than
Right.
it's been
Yeah.
something I've been involved with for years,
Tom,
but so have others.
Feel strongly you're very
Yeah,
involved
yeah.
in
I mean,
transportation.
I guess the well, obviously I'm thrilled that there's interest in this committee so much, and we're not just backing off, and that's wonderful. Actually, the engagement is already happening. So the thing that I think is so critical at this time, as we proceed the budget process for this year, is I feel like I hit the ground running knowing a fair amount about what the budget process is at the RCT, at the Transportation Agency. And I feel like I know, like, there is infrastructure money coming down. There's a number of other grant money sources coming down the pipe. The city has made the city fails to timely submit its request to the comprehensive planning process last year, and this former mayor did go hat in hand, and the committee did manage to put us back into the running for some money, and that money is going to be spent in the city of Sonoma on improving our bike infrastructure. So I feel like for this critical period of time, I can bring that experience onto this committee and help our whole commission out. Now, do I want to stay in transportation as the transportation czar of this committee? By no means is that something I'm aspiring to do, but I feel like that's why I've been a little bit hard on staying on this committee for this particular period of time. And I look forward to learning from the both of you your areas of expertise, and especially in EV chargers. I don't know very much about that space. But that's why I'm kind of insisting on keeping my hat in the ring for transportation, and I hope that is understood and not taken personally.
That's very compelling. Other arguments in favor of your staying in the list here or pulling out? I don't know whether we need to, how we move forward without voting.
Please use your mic, sorry.
We need 2 members, not 3, for this process, and we have 3 eager participants in the process. So I would urge somebody to
It's your
defer.
turn to say why you think you would be a
Yeah,
good fit.
yeah. Let's have speeches in favor of your being on the committee.
I've had 10 years of active work in transportation and great depth of research, and I really think that we have to get out of the automobile and start moving into transit. And transit is kind of a dirty word, but this is streetcars. Streetcars they emit water and oxygen. I know that the vehicle is outstanding. I know it intimately. It's made, TIG is made in L.A. And I think this is a real solution. And it starts bringing people into community instead of the individual automobile. So there's social and structural advantages. And besides it being the biggest imprint.
Very compelling, thank you. Is there a possibility to have 3 but only 2 show up in any public meeting?
I would never approve of that.
I was
With my
afraid
name
of
on
that.
this.
Yeah.
So I'll just make a suggestion. We have only 1 for community engagement and 3 for transportation. So ideally, if we can have 1 person move to that. Now,
Well, we have 2
this
in
is
community
Why
engagement
don't
with
we have the other two?
Kendall and David.
Okay. Okay. I thought I just had 1, so now we
had
have 2.
Kendall and David are
Okay.
2 in community engagement. So
So-
if we had 3 there, then we have to
Nope.
juggle again.
Again, I just had 1.
We have
so.
only 1 no, we have 2, Tom and Amber. Tom with a question mark.
So my suggestion would be to move forward would be to, so again, everyone's going to participate. This is just to do this initial list and to work on it. So one compromise would be if an individual would serve the first 6 months, and after 6 months, they switch out. So there can only be 2. And that way, and that's just on the subcommittee, but when we bring this forth to the full commission, everyone's expertise is critical, so it's not exclusionary of the knowledge and experience.
I would like to hear why the other 2 think they should be on the transportation, being that I had to say that.
Tom already said that, so that is 2. And I think Philip said something at the beginning about the degree to which he's worked. And I've heard from all 3 of the commissioners who've expressed interest in the transportation subcommittee.
Well, maybe you have, but I haven't.
Through the chair, if I may, I would be happy to restate briefly what I did say.
Sure.
Which is that I believe for this short period between now and budget time, I think my experience at the regional county level and knowledge of the funding streams that are available to the city that might be repurposable as match funding for some of this other money is valuable. And toward what staff just recommended, I would be willing to step down after 6 months if that is the pleasure of this commission.
Thank you, Tom. Philip, why don't you say a little more about your strength and interest in the Transportation Ad Hoc Subcommittee?
Well, I do have a little bit of a disagreement about the importance of electric cars from you. But I'll make it easy. I'll just pull out of this, and I'm going to provide a lot of input.
Yeah.
And I'm around to consult. But let's not,
Right.
if you'd
All
like
right.
to do it.
Thank you.
I have an open mind.
Thank you. Thank you. And so what I see now, we have transportation with Alan and Tom. We have buildings and solid waste with Alan and Philip. We have water and carbon with Amber and David. We have community engagement with Kendall and David. And we have government operations with Amber and potentially Tom. Do I have these straight so that we have 2 in each and nobody is assigned to 3? We've juggled the balls to this point.
Can we drop the potentially?
I would like to make a motion to finalize those committees as described by
Okay.
the chair.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Is there further discussion of the motion to accept this arrangement that we have identified? Any further discussion? Let's go to a vote. All in favor? Or we go individually? You call
roll
them
call.
by name. Roll call.
Yep.
All right.
Commissioner Heinerman,
Different than my other board.
Aye.
Commissioner Nickel,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward,
Aye.
Vice Chair Conlon,
Hi, aye.
and Chair Morrell.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes
We've done
unanimously.
it. We've done it. And you've captured those 5 and 2 names each. And my messy handwriting isn't critical.
Thank you, by the way.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you all
Thanks.
for an interesting way to work this out. And where are we now on the agenda, Dr. Wagner? We've got
Agenda
the
number
5 we're on to agenda item number 4. Is that correct?
So it's agenda number 4, where commissioners can make reports or comments. So just for clarification, if someone makes a comment, you cannot discuss it because it's not on the agenda. But there are possibilities if you want to vote to agendize something, you can, but there just can't be discussion of other commissioners' comments. But you can make a comment, announcement, or whatever.
Excellent. So let's, why don't we start with Amber, and we'll come in this, excuse me, please. We'll start with Amber and work our way this way with open commissioner comments on climate issues and other comments you want to share with your fellow commissioners and the public.
Thank you, Commissioner Morrell. I do think, as Commissioner Conlon mentioned earlier, we were mandated into an emergency, and it does feel like this is a long process to get to where we are, while also having the handcuffs to not really be able to do a lot. It went from a huge document that feels like a lot to get through, into something more manageable, but still very constricted and restricted. What I do love, and I know it felt like having the community engagement by spring feels like a push and a force, but what perfect timing then to have something in April to coincide with Earth Month and Earth Day, because that's going to be the easiest way to get the community engagement that we desire. And it's 2 months away. It's right around the corner, and I think it will really help push us forward and move into what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kendall, comments at this point in the process?
I just wanted to emphasize on what Commissioner Amber was saying. So, I think it's really important that we emphasize on the transportation within the subcommittees, as it's the number one emission in Sonoma. And also, I think it's a good idea to do something related to Earth Day to get more engagement. I think that will work. And that I'm excited that we're able to start and move on this, as like everyone has been saying. This has been a really long process, and it feels like it's just been a lot of talk and no action. So I'm hoping that in these subcommittees we can actually start having action instead of just talk, because I feel like that's how it's been for a long time, not just here, but everywhere. So, yeah.
Thank you, Kendall. Your, any comments you'd like to make at this point in the meeting?
I'm happy.
Happiness is encouraged. Philip?
My father once told me when he was mayor of our town that he had a rule that all meetings are ended after an hour, because if you can't say what's important in an hour, then you're wasting time. So let's hope we can shorten things. But no, he was right.
He didn't deal with the Brown Act.
And he was wrong about me. Let me tell you that. There were a lot of things that he was wrong about me, but my dad was right about the 1 hour thing.
I'm sorry, what
Yeah.
is your first name again?
Philip. Tom Conlon?
Well, I'm not going to talk about my dad up here tonight, but
Please. I
It would be fun. We could all have a good time.
Wait till Father's Day.
But in underreport, I think I should just bring forward that the Sonoma Valley Collaborative met this afternoon, and I serve on that group, and it's kind of a unique and important institution almost at this point in the valley, bringing together groups that normally wouldn't get a chance to talk to one another, but for the fact that that body has been formed. And we have been working on housing policy at that table for a while and felt reasonably successful in seeing 18 of the 23 measures that we had collectively recommended to the city council adopted in the new housing element. So we are looking at new opportunities. And so that was just our initial first discussion today about what else the Sonoma Valley Collaborative might work on. So I wanted to put that in people's minds tonight. We heard a lot of talk about education. We heard a lot of talk about the vulnerable population in our valley, particularly I think it was 8,000 people that our former city manager has identified in a report under the Catalyst Fund as being at risk of food security. And I suggested that we consider working with the business community on the next economy of Sonoma. What does that mean? We don't know yet, but I feel like we need to move beyond some of the old patterns that we have had because we know that they're unsustainable and they don't produce the equity benefits to our citizens and community members that we need. So I wanted tonight to get people thinking about those things, and so that's my report. And if we can, again, emphasize to the chair to work on the urgency matter that is front and center for so many of us tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Conlon. And let me add a few comments that I've been thinking about sharing. First of all, as you heard earlier this evening, from my point of view at least, and I would hope my fellow commissioners would agree, we're more interested in action than in talk. We're more interested in action than in writing documents that go nowhere. And we're going to try to find ways in the constraints of budget and Brown Act and the other parts of our lives that we do that. In that regard, I have 4 specific action items to put on the table for further consideration in the weeks and months ahead. Number 1, and some will find some of this provocative, that's not by surprise on my part. Installing parking controls on the Sonoma Plaza. That's number 1. There's an immediate example that's quite brilliant, in my view at least, from Paso Robles, further south from here. There are other examples. They don't involve parking meters. There are a few kiosks. We cannot be a climate leader and have free parking on the plaza, even for 3 hours. There's a lot of details, and there's a lot of concern with the business community. I'm going to come back to that in my 4th item. Number 2. I want to think about sponsoring the development of cost-saving, multi-dwelling solar microgrids in this town. We can drive the cost of solar down for so many of our houses by sharing systems that get the greatest solar flux in a cul-de-sac, in an area of 4 or 5 houses, a critical piece, and this could be a joint effort of the City of Sonoma and Sonoma Clean Power, or maybe PG&E, but I think it's probably more feasible to work with Sonoma Clean Power from my experience. Number 3, I propose significant sequestering of biochar in the ground, elemental carbon in the ground on Sonoma properties. Sonoma Plaza, Montini, Sonoma Overlook Trail, Sonoma Garden Park, Nathanson Preserves, others. Tracking carbon sequestered and its results, and this can be a joint effort with Sonoma Ecology Center. And number 4, and then consistent with what Tom Conlon just said, I believe, I propose we seriously look at carrying out a joint in-depth study of what is needed to be a truly climate-smart tourist destination here in Sonoma, that I propose this be a foundation-funded, significant joint effort, again, between the City of Sonoma and Sonoma Ecology Center. We go looking for a foundation, we write a winning proposal, we get the money in the door, and we do a great effort. I've been coordinating initially with a series of ski communities driven out of Sun Valley and Aspen. There are 12 communities already working on this. We are not a ski community, but we have many similarities. And let's not reinvent the wheel, let's coordinate with them. I think we could write a joint proposal that would knock the socks off a foundation or two. So those are the four, and in the spirit of sharing some other things that are happening with the Sonoma Ecology Center and the Biochar Initiative, we are about to install, finally, after a year and a half of using a CAL FIRE grant, California's first pyrolysis unit. It will be in Napa, in American Canyon, at the Napa recycling site, and I'm expecting it to arrive between 4 and 8 more weeks after a year or more of interesting CEQA and permitting and various things that happen in the real world. We're getting very close, and we'll keep you posted on this. So with that, those are my final comments from my point of view. Other commissioners have, I've lost my agenda, I got so excited, so I don't know where we are, but we're close. Staff member comments and announcements, or do we have any other commissioner comments that, before we move to the next agenda item?
Well, the question is whether we want to take formal action on anything that anybody said under those reports as for to be agendized.
I see, for a future agenda
To
item.
ask staff to agendize it tonight. And you are the most specific of any of us. I was maybe alluding to some of that with my discussions about working with the business community to come up with your fourth bullet on.
Yes, sir. Would anybody like to propose that we get something on our next meeting agenda in any of these items that commissioners have brought forward this evening?
I'll fumble around and try to make a motion here in support of agendizing a discussion at the next meeting about climate smart tourism in Sonoma. And in my mind, subsume the parking discussion under that.
Excellent. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Second. Philip has seconded. So I believe that then opens it up to, do we get public comment first again, or is that only on the Brown Act items? Or do we go simply to discussion?
It's your discretion to open it back up.
No, we can just go ahead
We
for
could just
further
do it.
discussion.
It would just be a.
Oh, it's a roll call vote to approve going to discussion of this motion.
Discuss it, but we can discuss the agendizing of it.
Yes.
Unless someone would like to make an amendment to the motion. Otherwise, then we would just go to a roll call vote.
Please. Staff will run the roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Heinerman?
Aye.
Commissioner Nickel?
Aye.
Commissioner Ward?
Aye.
Vice Chair Conlon?
Aye.
And Chair Morrell?
Aye, unanimous.
Has there been a flyer sent out with all our addresses and contact info? Is it possible to get something like that?
Someone would have to give, I can send it out, but I would need specific permission to give out home address.
I don't need the home address, I did an email and.
Email.
Oh, yes, yes, it's all.
Email and phone addresses circulated to all
It's the same
commission
thing.
members?
What's that?
I don't believe we're allowed to talk as commissioners
Right.
about commission business between meetings.
You can with one other person.
can with
With
one
the
other.
exception of one other
Yes.
person
Yeah.
or an ad hoc.
Yeah, so
Right.
you can't send out emails to, you
Oh,
cannot send out,
And you can't even have a serial meeting.
correct. So you can't send out emails to more than one person.
No, I
Yeah.
understand that,
Yeah.
I just want to be able to contact people.
All the information
Individually.
is inside the binder.
But, yeah.
All right.
Thank you, I
Thank
haven't
you.
looked.
In the binder.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right. So we have that motion has been adopted. Um, Okay, so we don't need further discussion. Good, lovely. Are there other topics or commissioner comments before I close agenda item 3?
4.
We're moving to 4.
No, we're in
we've
4
had-
right
we're in-
now.
We're in
Yeah.
4.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead with 4, Travis.
No, 5 you mean. So you're closing out 4.
We're
Yeah.
closing 4.
Yeah.
And now we,
In 5.
5, staff comments and announcements.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
So I'll start. So first of all, I just want to say congratulations to everyone. This was an inaugural meeting. Just creating a commission itself is a monumental task. I had no idea how it was going to go, and it actually went quite smoothly. So that's really good. And as we heard earlier, there were many applications. There's a lot of talent out there in the community, and the question is, how can we best capture that within the constraints of the Brown Act? I'll say my least favorite job is being the Brown Act referee. But it is important because it's a way to make sure that the public has full access and knowledge of meetings, and therefore they can choose to attend. So it's really important, but, it's rules. I also want to say that I know it's come up that, and as Commissioner Ward mentioned about the public engagement, all that is guidelines. And if the commission feels like they're not prepared to make budget recommendations, they're just not ready to do this, or they're ready to do something more, that's up to you. This is just a starting point. It's a suggested timeline, but it's going to be up to you to decide when you're ready to move forward and do a particular action item. So don't look at that as a contract, but it was just a suggested timeline. And then finally, I just want to mention, we will get back to you about the ad hoc committees as to meetings and so forth. So that was the preliminary instructions that I received, but I will verify them as quickly as possible and get them emailed out to everyone. And as usual, if I email out to everyone, please don't hit reply all. You'll see that on every message from now on. I just want to make sure, because that's just a Brown Act item. So that's all I have to say. Do you have anything to say about it?
Just maybe it's a point of clarification, but on the suggested tentative meeting schedule, I think that it's a minimum of quarterly meetings, but if you would choose to add a meeting, I think that is allowed, or no?
No, it's actually under the ordinance. There are 4 meetings unless City Council directs you to have additional meetings. It's a City Council call. Yeah.
So if we wanted to have another meeting, if 2 of us, not 3, thought another meeting might be worth chasing, we would ask council to approve such a thing.
I'll just say the ordinance is that you meet quarterly unless the City Council directs you otherwise.
Understood. And one other thought, and particularly with our new interim planning director with us, I had suggested that at some point it would be, and this is part of my experience having been on the CSEC and the Joint Committee and so on, and a lot of wheel spinning went on, that at some point during the year, we arrange a joint meeting of this commission and the Planning Commission. We have so much in common to be Brown Act frozen away from each other at some point, ideally twice a year, but we're all pretty GD busy. So once a year, maybe a joint meeting with Planning Commission would be extremely useful for this entire community. And to talk about everything from affordable housing being a climate issue, which I happen to believe it is, to the other issues that are in front of the Planning Commission and so on. Something to think about.
I'd like to have.
Are there any other items from the commission? I believe we're at adjournment point.
Oh, we would need to approve the tentative meeting schedule, I believe.
Oh.
Is that
Quickly.
for the dates?
Soon.
Is that
It's tentative.
Yeah.
tentative? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's actually, it's not an item on there. So.
Oh, that I just read.
No, that's, actually, I mean, it is agenda item listed, so it seems like we would have to approve that.
Where is this?
It's under number
Oh,
5.
it's turning it
Yeah,
over. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh. So we're still in business. We're on agenda item 5, which flops over to the back here, with it's under staff, but it's called a tentative meeting schedule of April, August, and November.
So I'd like
Is there a motion?
that we adopt a tentative meeting schedule.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
I'll
Is there a
second that measure.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Oh, no, we can't do
We'll
all
do
in
a
favor.
roll call vote.
Roll call vote. I'll get it by the end of the year.
Commissioner Heinerman,
Aye.
Commissioner Nickel,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward,
Aye.
Vice Chair Conlon,
Yes.
and Chair Morrell.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
And now the meeting is officially adjourned.
Move to adjourn.
Thank